Oh boy, finally another male character after 10 years of waiting, and he is not actually bad at all. 47k versus the new boss and 34k versus Defiler. Honestly, that does sound pretty good in my book, and to top it all off, he is literally given to you for free, including his skin. But it wouldn't be me if I didn't tell you that without Lucia, you might wanna think twice whether or not you actually wanna play him. But if you do, to make sure you know perfectly how to build and play your perfectly dressed up Manato, let's talk about his kit and how he plays, his best weapons, destroys and destroy sets, his combos and rotations, his main and substats, his teams and Mindscapes, and lastly, let's also talk about his pros and cons. Welcome! I'm Rivenous, and this is your complete in-depth guide to KOMANO MANATO. Manato is a Rupture Fire DPS who specializes in extended assist follow-ups and enhanced basic attacks, consuming his own health in exchange for strengthening his attacks. While Manato is still mainly focused on using his enhanced basic attacks at Mindscapes 0, this shifts more and more towards his assist follow-ups the closer you get to Mindscape 6. And even though this guide focuses mainly on his playstyle at Mindscape 6, we will still touch upon Mindscape 0 Manato regardless. Fortunately for us, however, Manato at the baseline is rather straightforward, so let's cover his kit. As a Rupture agent, all fire damage dealt by Manato is considered sheer damage and scales of his sheer force. Sheer force can be gained through various methods, such as buffs, but by default 30% of his attack and 10% of his maximum HP are converted into sheer force. This also means Rupture units have a horrible attack scaling, as a 1200 attack buff from the likes of Astra would only translate into a mere 400 sheer force. Or in other words, Rupture units are HP scalers. Furthermore, Rupture agents do not have energy, instead they have adrenaline, which, to be fair, works exactly the same as energy, except they cannot profit from energy regeneration and also do not gain adrenaline from the likes of, for example, Lucy's ultimate. Lastly, sheer damage always ignores all of the enemy's defense by default, which means defense threat, pen ratio and flat pen are completely useless for him. Manato has his own unique resource called Blazing Heart and is as per usual indicated right below his HP bar. Blazing Heart caps out at 100 points, and if he has 75 points or more he enters the Melting Edge state, consuming 3.3 Blazing Heart per second. If all Blazing Heart points are depleted, Melting Edge ends. While Manato is in this state, however, he gains 10% crit rate, 20% fire damage bonus, his basic attacks become enhanced, and he can also use his AX special. Furthermore, if Manato has at least 30% max HP, using an enhanced basic attack will consume 3.5% of this said max HP. When using an enhanced basic attack or his assist follow-up and that attack does consume HP, it will gain a 50% crit damage bonus as well as a 100% adrenaline recovery bonus. While Manato does have normal basic attacks as well, we don't ever want to use them, because they deal physical damage and hence also not sheer damage. Again, only his fire damage is considered sheer damage. And while he does feature an input mechanic to convert them into fire damage, the scaling on it is absolutely horrendous and you do not ever want to use these. That is also because they are only available when you are outside of the Melting Edge state, and that is frankly not something you want. You always want to be inside of the Melting Edge state. Because of that, we will skip them and forget they exist. If you use them, you are playing him wrong and are massively wasting his potential, as sad as it is. His enhanced basic attacks, however, are prominently used, and because they are only available while he is in the Melting Edge state, we want to make sure to always be in said Melting Edge state. That is even disregarding all of his buffs, which you definitely also don't want to miss out on. In addition, his enhanced basic attacks will, as previously said, consume 3.5% of his own HP when used, but there are two caveats to this. First, his current health needs to be above 30% of his max HP to consume any health in the first place, and second, he will only gain the 50% crit damage bonus from his core if he actually does consume HP. This effectively means we technically always want to make sure to stay above 30% max HP. And to make sure we stay also in the melting edge state, we have a few ways of recovering Blazing Heart. First, his defensive assist will generate 75 points, and as a side note, this is the first parry that also deals damage. Not a lot, mind you, but it is unique and I feel like it should be mentioned. Secondly, holding down his special attack will consume 10% of his maximum HP over 3 seconds, generates up to 75 points of Blazing Heart, and then unleashes his special attack at the end. Simply pressing his special will also unleash said special attack, and both his health special as well as his normal special will deal increased damage and restore 20% of his missing HP if Manato is attacked during the skill. Both specials will be very important and frequently used during his rotations, which leads us to the third way of recovering Blazing Heart. At Mindscapes 6, hitting a stunned enemy with his normal pressed special will also restore 75 Blazing Heart as well, and this effect can trigger once every 20 seconds, or in other words, once per stun window. His EX special can only be used when inside the melting edge state, and outside of dealing a large amount of damage at the cost of 80 adrenaline, it will also restore 33% of his missing HP. Both the damage as well as the HP restore are even more of a reason to never exit the melting edge state. As a side note, on his EX special, his 80 adrenaline costs are actually pretty steep, and you always want to make sure to have enough for every stun window. His ultimate and chain exist, and we will use them, but there is nothing special about them otherwise, so yeah. His dodge counter and dash attack exist as well, but we will not use them. His dodge counter doesn't really do anything but damage and daze, and we would much rather use his special, as we need the HP recovery from it to manage his HP, as well as to use his assist follow-up more frequently. As for his assist follow-up, speaking of it already, after the initial hit we can repeatedly press his basic attack button, and Manato will then perform up to 7 additional slashes. This does not only deal a significant amount of damage, but each slash will also consume 2% of his maximum HP to trigger his core passive. Due to his additional core, however, this amount effectively becomes 0%. More on this in just a bit. At Mindscape 2, he then is also able to launch his assist follow-up directly after a successful parry with his special, and at Mindscape 6, if he hits a stunned enemy with his special attack, he can then use his assist follow-up as well. Lastly, let's finish his kit with his additional ability, and he requires either a stun or a support agent. Casting a chain attack grants him 4 stacks of Remnant Flame, and using his ultimate will grant him 8 stacks. Remnant Flame can stack up to 16 times and lasts for 60 seconds. Using an enhanced basic attack or an additional slash of his assist follow-up will then consume 1 stack to restore 2% of his maximum HP. And that covers his kit, so let's summarize how he plays. We use his defensive assist, his health special, as well as his special during the stun to restore Blazing Heart. We use his special to follow up with his assist follow-up. We also utilize his special and EX special to manage his HP to stay above 30%, and we also utilize his enhanced basic attacks while we are in field and have nothing else to do. Lastly, we want to save our EX special and ultimate for the stun window. Because a large part of his damage actually comes from his ultimate and chain attack, our skill priority will be adjusted as such. First, focus on his core skill and chain, then his assist, basics and EX, and lastly his dodge. You can leave his dodge at level 1 if you are confident to use his special instead. His quick assist leads directly into his basic 3, so the most generic combo here would be quick assist into basic 3 and basic 4. Ideally, we want to swap cancel his basic 4. As already mentioned previously, outside of the stun window and when attacked during his special, it leads directly into his extended assist follow-up. This will be the primary combo you will be using, well, outside of his enhanced basic 1, 2, 3 and 4 that is. Frankly, there are not too many actual combos to him that aren't absolutely integral to his kit, so let's talk about his stun combo. Spoiler warning ahead. For his stun combo, we require at least 2254 decibels and 80 energy before going into the stun window. His chains generate approximately 239 decibels each, and his EX special 266.5, which allows us to hit 3000 decibels during stun. We begin by triggering the chain using the EX special of another character, optimally our stunner, to apply King of the Summit. We can use any other character in the step if your stunner is Jufufu, however. We then cast his chain attack, cancel the chain, use his EX special and swap cancel the EX special to re-trigger the chain with another character. This time we ideally use the EX of our support to make sure Moonlight Lullaby doesn't run out during the stun window. We select Manato again for a second chain attack, then use his special to restore Blazing Heart and follow up with his extended assist follow-up. Lastly, we then finish the stun combo with his ultimate. As a side note, the last sideward slash of his assist follow-up does not deal a significant amount of damage, and we can animation cancel it with his ultimate to make sure we fit everything into the stun window, just in case you are short on time. The reason we want to use his EX special in between the chains here is A. to save time, B. if you are running Yunkui Summit to gain as many stacks as early into the combo as possible, and C. in case you are running Puzzle Sphere, we want the crit damage bonus as early as possible into the stun window. The two reasons why we do double chains on him are A. to get the 4 additional stacks of Remnant Flame for his additional ability, and B. in case you are running Radio Wave Journey to make sure you always have full stacks. TLDR being, this combo should be optimal for almost every single build out there and also all scenarios, and with that said, let's have a look at some gameplay. Because Manato's Mindscape 1 requires him to have consumed a total of 50% or more HP, I simply begin combat by using his health special 4 times. This puts him at 60% max HP and makes sure I can start combat with nearly all of his buffs in place pretty early. I start off on Jufufu with some basics to stack Blazing Laurel and generate some energy, and then I switch into Manato to start generating adrenaline with his enhanced basic attacks. I then parry the first hit with Jufufu and input her assist follow-up before I parry the second hit with Lucia. Unfortunately for me here, Jufufu's assist follow-up hits nothing but thin air and the floor behind the boss, which means I do not actually get the momentum from it even though I planned for it. Unlucky. After Lucia's parry, I use her assist follow-up to get into the dream state and activate Ether Veil. I then switch back to Manato and continue to basic attack before I parry again with Jufufu. I aim to allocate most of the parries to Jufufu for higher days and Manato, well, because of his assist follow-ups. I then quickly switch to Lucia to cast her EX to extend Ether Veil and go directly back to Manato to continue with his basic attacks. I realize I am low on health and start to slowly run out of Blazing Heart as well, so I try to get hit from his next attack during my special to restore Blazing Heart, heal myself up and cast his assist follow-up. But as I am not fully used to the boss attack patterns yet, this does not work as well as I intended it to do. But the third attempt hits, and that means I can now follow up with his assist follow-up, which I then don't do and instead switch to Jufufu for no reason but because I panicked. Well, you know, that is how gameplay is. I proceed with Jufufu's EX special, switch to Lucia to restore just a little bit of energy to have her EX special up in time very soon, then parry on Manato and follow up with his extended assist follow-up. I then parry on Jufufu and initiate the stun window. I select Manato, use his chain attack, then cancel the chain and use his EX special. I swap cancel his EX special and decide to use Fufu's ultimate here instead of Lucia's EX for higher damage, even though I literally just found energy for it. Anyway, I select Manato again, use his chain, then his special to refill Blazing Heart, and then his extended assist follow-up. Because I choose to use Fufu's ultimate here instead of Lucia's EX, I am shorter on time than usual because the animation is longer. So I cancel his last assist follow-up attack with my ultimate to make sure it fully fits into the stun window. This leaves us at approximately a 10,000 score after the first stun window, and this run resulted in the thumbnails 47k. Given how this run was by no means perfect and still resulted in a massive 47k, Manato is honestly not a bad unit at all. I would even argue he does in fact pretty well. But I also again do want to point out that he really likes Lucia, and the Deadly Assault buff here did play a big role for such a score as well. Which again is because of Lucia, because the Deadly Assault buff only works with Ether Veil and there's no other unit who can, you know, provide Ether Veil. Anyway, let's talk about his weapons. Manato's signature at R5 is his best in slot option, with the R1 version being around 10% lower. If you have Yijuan's signature, simply due to it being a fantastic HP percent and crit rate stat stick with also high base attack, it is not too much below his own signature and his second best option. If you run either the Battle Pass weapon, Radio Wave Journey, Yetadi's signature or the craftable Puzzle Sphere, crit rate in slot 4 is the recommended choice. So, Manato has the small problem that he does not really have a great set for himself. For the 4-piece, either Yunkui Tails or Inferno Metal or even Dawn's Bloom or Chaos Jazz will all do well enough. Yunkui Tails is probably his best and most consistent set, albeit it is not necessarily great either, as he will pretty much only have any uptime on it during stun. So essentially, despite it not being great, it is still his best set. The new boss Wandering Hunter has an extremely high anomaly build-up requirement and will massively lower how many burns both Manato and Jufufu or Lighter can get. This makes Inferno Metal not only highly unreliable, simply because you cannot necessarily control when that burn is gonna proc, but you can also expect around a 30% uptime on it, possibly even lower. Versus other bosses such as Pompeii, who do not have this extremely high anomaly build up, this set will fare a little bit better. Even though Manato is not an attack agent, he can still get a 35% basic attack damage bonus from Dawn's Bloom, which makes the set at least usable on him, but he will not really get any use out of it during stun, and optimally you also use his basic attacks less and more his assist follow-ups, so this set will be better for pre-M6 Manato, and I would not recommend it, but I want to list it for the M0 Manatos out here. Due to his reliance on his assist follow-ups and Chaos Jazz providing a 15% fire damage bonus as well as a 20% assist damage, this set can be surprisingly okay on him. However, Manato already does gain a lot of damage bonus from slot 5, his core passive and his Mindscapes, which diminishes this set's value. Personally, I would recommend and emphasize that Yunkui Tails is his best in slot choice. Just because I list other options here doesn't mean they are the best choices or I would necessarily recommend them, I just want to give you context. As for his 2-piece, he really likes crit rate and a 2-piece Woodpecker will be his best generic choice. But if you already have a lot of crit rate, a 2-piece Branch and Blade will do its job as well, potentially better. As for his main stats, crit damage in slot 4, fire damage in slot 5 and HP percent in slot 6 are his best choices. Crit rate in slot 4 will work as well if you are short on, well, crit rate, and HP percent in slot 5 can be okay as well, especially if you have much better substats on it. Speaking of which, focus on crit values first and foremost, then HP percent and flat HP. If nothing else, lastly attack percent and flat attack. As for his endgame stat goals, try to aim to get as close to 100% crit rate in combat as possible, which means given you are using his signature at R5, a maximum of 76% in the stat screen without 4-piece Yunkui Tails or Inferno Metal, a maximum of 64% in the stat screen with 4-piece Yunkui Tails, and a maximum of 48% in the stat screen with a 4-piece Inferno Metal. Whether or not his Mindscapes are a substantial damage gain will largely depend on the matchup as well as on how you play, as they primarily either simply provide stats or change, and that is very important, how he can be played. Because of that, I will not provide calculations for his Mindscapes. His Mindscape 1 provides up to 20% fire damage bonus for his assist follow-ups and his enhanced basic attacks. Once a total of 50% of his max HP has been consumed, he will then retain the maximum 20% fire damage bonus for the rest of combat. Start off by pressing his EX special 4 to 5 times before combat even begins and you are good to go. His Mindscape 2 grants him 8% fire rest threat, and after a successful parry with his special, he can now launch his assist follow-up directly afterwards. His M3 and M5 exist, and his M4 provides him increased HP and prevents him from dying when casting his specials. As for his M6, when using his special against a stun target, he gains 75 points of Blazing Heart, 4 stacks of Remnant Flame, and now also allows him to use his assist follow-up as a direct follow-up to his special as well. On top of that, he also gains up to 15% fire damage. As a Rupture DPS himself, Manato appreciates all the teammates' other Rupture agents such as Yijuan and Yutarido. However, and this is important, because the Rupture Deadly Assault buff requires Ether Veil and there are no other real alternatives that suit him or his teams, at least as of right now, you are pretty out of luck without Lucia. Since Manato really likes his stun windows and also wants his ultimate to be up for every single one of them, he pairs exceptionally well with Jufufu. With Jufufu being fire type as well, she can stun both of his best matchups, those being the Wandering Hunter and Pompey, pretty quickly, while also providing damage buffs and crit damage to Manato and allowing for enough heal time on him. As it should be to nobody's surprise, Lucia is the best Rupture support in the game and hence also for Manato. If you want to get most out of Manato, Lucia is the go-to choice for him, and I would highly recommend you to check out my Lucia guide right over here. You will find a link also in the description. If you don't have Lucia, however, Panyahue is the next best available free-to-play option, and if you don't have Jufufu, a double support composition of either Astra or Panda and Lucia or Panda will do well enough. However, because you will not be hitting even 3 stun windows, it is much better to use his EX and ultimate on cooldown in such a team rather than saving it for the stun windows. Because he relies on stun windows quite a lot, I personally would recommend running a stunner with him. If you are free to play and you don't have Jufufu or Astra, or they are busy in another team, Khalida and Pulchra can do their job. Yes, they will be worse than Jufufu, but not everyone has every unit and this team can be a Deadly Assault just fine, well, given that you do have, well, Lucia, at least at this moment. Lighter will also work with Manato rather well, not only providing quick stuns, but also massive fire damage buffs, Res Shred, and a stun extension which Manato highly appreciates. However, Lighter's additional ability requires either an attack agent or a Caledon character, and that means we have to run ideally Orphe in the last slot, but Lucy, Pulchra or Caesar will work as well. Manato can also work with Orphe, and while Orphe's buffs are not fantastic for him, especially when paired with Jufufu, Orphe will contribute enough personal damage to this team to make it competitive. Big yippee if you like both of them. However, again, as of right now, the buffs in Deadly Assault do not play in favor of this team. And lastly, as it has been the case previously with Yijuan as well, Chingy and Trigger are some other options. As a side note here on Trigger, because Rupture units ignore all defense by default, Trigger's W engine is actually not that great of a choice for this team, and funnily enough, if you have Lighter signature Blazing Laurel, it is her best in slot choice for this team specifically. Let's finish the video with his pros and cons. Even if Jufufu and Lucia are his best in slot choices by a large margin, Manato has a surprising amount of available teams for himself. Even if there is a clear difference between having Lucia and Jufufu or, well, not having them. But again, that's because of the DA buffs, which is just really unfortunate because it just makes it kinda hard to judge other teams as of right now. His weapon choices are not half bad either, especially if you have Yijuan's signature or get at least one copy of his own signature Grillo Wisp. He does not really have a fantastic set for himself, which kind of just limits his potential. And because his damage is split all over his kit, aside of his dodge, he is also relatively expensive in terms of skill levels. And lastly, even though the current Deadly Assault buff massively inflates his damage and Lucia is insanely important for him as well, he can score extremely well as of right now. I would argue he is one of the best A ranks we have gotten since Nicole and Piper. However, he also is, at least as of right now, due to how the Deadly Assault buffs work, extremely reliant on Lucia. And with that, we are at the end of the video. Before I leave you with 2 showcases against Defiler for the people who don't want spoilers, as well as the new boss for the people who don't care about it, Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment on your thoughts and Manato, and join the Discord. Specifically, I would be very interested in your experience on playing Manato after he has released, especially if you don't have Lucia. Or if you have Lucia, let me know if you find a difference between playing with Lucia and not. And I'm sure you do. Anyway, special thanks to my YouTube and Patreon members who make this content possible. If you wish to support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description. And as always, I appreciate all of you and wish you a great day. Peace!